Really quickly, though, Reverend, I'd love to ask you about Joe Biden entering the race. There's been a lot of attention on Mayor Pete over the past several weeks. But as I said yesterday, this election, the real election for the Democratic nomination does not really begin until it turns south from New Hampshire and goes down to South Carolina, because at that point, you start moving away from two states that are predominantly white, overwhelmingly white, and start going to South Carolina, where you have a more diverse electorate that is far more reflective of what the Democratic Party is.
No doubt about it. I think as we move south after New Hampshire, you start dealing with not only a diversity in race, and you have a diversity in class. And you're going to have to really prove to people that you understand their situations, be it economic, be it social, be it across racial and gender lines, and that you can relate. And I think that when we get to South Carolina and then on to Nevada, California and all, we began to see the real race. And I think the real battle is going to be, Joe, whether or not we can have candidates that can appeal to those blue-collar white workers and at the same time talk to the black and brown communities in a way that we relate and that we feel that they understand and will deal with our policies. That's what the special is about. And how you're able to reconcile both. I think that there's been this strategy of one or the other. I think the one that will win the nomination and can beat Trump is the one that can have a synthesis of the both by uniting white blue-collar workers and black and brown people around what their common thread is under this administration.
So Reverend Al, right now, based on the 20 or so candidates that are in the race, does Joe Biden seem, just at this point, because people grow on the campaign trail, but just at this point, does Joe Biden seem to be best equipped to bring about that synthesis between working class white voters and black and Hispanic voters?
He has the equipment. The question is whether he can deliver it and whether the body blows that he will have to take will stop him from doing that. You cannot ignore what Anita Hill is saying, and should not. You cannot ignore some of the things around the crime bill, and he did come to our National Action Network breakfast and say he was wrong. So he's got to get by some things, but he has the equipment. But when you look at a Buttigieg, he may have it as well. There are other candidates that may have it as well. He's going to have to prove himself. You know, as a kid, I used to love Muhammad Ali. He had to prove himself to be the greatest every fight. It takes one punch, and you're no longer the greatest. You're the former greatest.
Right.
All right. Joe Biden's campaign revealed yesterday that he recently reached out to call Anita Hill to express regret over her treatment when she testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee when Biden was chairman back in 1991 about her allegations of sexual harassment against then Supreme Court nominee Clarence Thomas. In a statement, the Biden campaign said they had a private discussion where he shared with her directly his regret for what she endured and his admiration for everything that she has done to change the culture around sexual harassment in this country. Speaking to the New York Times, Hill said she left the conversation feeling deeply unsatisfied and declined to characterize Biden's words to her as an apology, and said she was not convinced that he had taken full responsibility for his conduct at the hearings or for the harm he caused other victims of sexual harassment and gender violence. Quote, "I cannot be satisfied by simply saying I'm sorry for what happened to you. I will be satisfied when I know there is real change and real accountability and real purpose," she said. Hill added that she's also troubled by the recent accusations against Biden of improper touching. Karine Jean-Pierre, help me through this story. What's your response to Anita Hill's response?
So this is really a tough one, and I think it has been, to say the obvious, Namika, I think it has been a blind spot for Joe Biden. And I just want to say I know Joe Biden. I worked in the Obama administration. I think the world of him and got to know him really well. And you know, this phone call that Biden offered and made made, it was 28 years in the making, right? It took a long time for it to happen, and for it to happen weeks before he was about to announce. I can understand why Anita Hill is a little bit, a little bit kind of like, well, it's a little bit too late. And so it is something that he's going to have to continue to deal with. It is something that he's going to have to take on a little bit more head on, and it's going to continue to come up. And Anita Hill, the fact is, Mika, Anita Hill was treated badly during the Clarence Thomas hearings. And it was, if you really think about it, if you look at the visual of it too, if you look back at videos, it was a black woman sitting there with her older African-American parents and a committee of white men. And it was very uncomfortable to watch. And I'm sure it was incredibly embarrassing for her. And it's like I said, it's been 28 years and no conversation has ever happened. And this is certainly a blind spot.
In that interview with the New York Times this week, Anita Hill said the phone call didn't feel like an apology to her. It felt like an explanation, like, I'm sorry you felt that way about it. Rev, you mentioned the crime bill. When people go back through Joe Biden's past, the highlights or the lowlights are the Anita Hill hearing and the crime bill. Have you heard enough from him? Has the National Action Network heard enough from him to explain that vote? You said he'd apologized for it and thought it was the wrong thing to do. Do you believe voters will move past that?
I think it has to be discussed because now many people that suffered in terms of where the crime bill caused undue long sentences, unjustified sentences, are still in jail, some just coming home. So you can't just wipe it away. I'd give former Vice President Biden credit. He stepped up to it at our breakfast and brought it up. I didn't ask him. This wasn't in response to a question. He brought it up and laid it out. But let's remember the context. In the crime bill era, early 90s, the community had been inundated with crack. People were reacting to Len Bias, the basketball player's death. And many black elected officials were saying, we need to do something. When I marched against the crime bill, many of the Congressional Black Caucus members were denouncing me. Bernie Sanders voted for the crime bill. So this is not a Joe Biden issue. He was one that was out front. But if we're going to have this discussion, and we should, let's have it as a discussion, not just a political hit on Joe Biden. Society overreacted and still in some cases to it. And I don't think it's fair to isolate it to one candidate when many in this race supported that. And at that time, it was understandable, though I don't feel it was justifiable.
Hillary Clinton supported it. Bill Clinton signed it, of course.
Absolutely.
Well, and again, that's what's so important is, and the Rev is just so right. You have to remember the context of so many of these things. And with the crime bill, the Rev's exactly right. It's following Len Bias' shocking death. For kids that don't remember, like Sam Stein, Len Bias, a first-round draft pick for the Boston Celtics, died after cocaine, and also the epidemic, the crime wave epidemic from 89, 90, 91, 92, following the crack epidemic. Sam, there were Democrats that were pushing this. There were Republicans that were supporting this. Again, it's the context of it. You could even go back, even though I don't think a lot of people are going to go back to 1974 and him voting against busing. There were a lot of Democrats saying, wait a second, okay, we want to integrate schools, that's fine, but don't ask my kid to wake up at 5:30 in the morning and drive 45 minutes across town. That wasn't a Republican or a Democratic thing. And so it's so, for a guy that's been in office this long, it's awfully difficult to reach back 30 or 40 years, look at a vote, say you're evil without understanding the context around each one of these votes.
So I know who Len Bias is. The number
You're a
two
Boston
pick in the
guy.
Yeah.
Boston guy.
Let's just address the crime bill. It is sort of a deeply complicated piece of legislation because there were measures in there that would help communities that were struggling with the crack epidemic and crime. There were measures that dealt with gun control, and then there were these draconian sentencing guidelines. So it was a mixed bag. And that's why people like Bernie Sanders, of course, supported it. He actually spoke on the floor, warning about some of the impacts of it, but he voted for it because there was enough in there that was progressive enough for him and move the conversation forward enough. And so, there's nuance, obviously, to these legislations, and Joe Biden, like Bernie Sanders, like anyone else, has to deal with this nuance. The difference here is that Biden was the chief author of it, and so he has more ownership of it. And the other thing I would say is that, and then this addresses the Anita Hill stuff, one of the things Biden's going to have to figure out, I believe, is how to show contrition for these issues without seeming like he's erasing his record of accomplishments. And this is particularly true when it comes to Anita Hill and, broadly speaking, issue with women. He was accused, obviously, of inappropriate touching, and I don't think it's unfair to say that people had mixed feelings about those accusations and the legitimacy of them. But what was interesting, or maybe troubling for a lot of people, was how he responded to it. Instead of saying, I hear you, I'm going to change my behavior, he joked about it at the union event in his first public appearance after those accusations were made. And I thought that was a very peculiar way of handling it. I was a little bit surprised, to be honest, because normally you see politicians just show contrition and say they're going to change. But he said, he made jokes, and I don't know how that serves him necessarily going forward.
He also said, though, in the video that he did understand.
Right, but then he made the jokes, which sort of erased that goodwill he had tried to build up. And maybe I'm missing something, but I think he's going to have to get a better grasp of what it means to show contrition if he wants to be successful in this primary. And that's not just on the issue of Anita Hill and these accusations, but on issues like the crime bill, the Iraq war vote, the Bush tax cuts, things that he's going to have to address. He's going to have to figure out how to show contrition a little bit better.
Well, you know what, he may have to show contrition, but also, Donnie, he also has to say, hey, listen, I was there, you weren't. The Iraq war vote was a year and a half after 9/11. We had the CIA director telling me and George Bush it was a slam dunk that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and could use them against us, and we needed to go get them. The CIA director, who was in charge of doing it. I'm not relitigating this, but it's just like the crime bill. It's so easy, sitting in your newsroom in 2019 in front of your laptop, judging people for making decisions they make in 1974 or 1994 or 2002, when just about, I'm sorry, people don't like to hear this, but just about, and I'm going to just stay on Iraq for a second because that would be the most controversial thing that dogged Hillary Clinton in the campaign when she ran. Would have been good for Hillary to say, you know, the New York Times and the Washington Post both editorialized that when George W. Bush was president of the United States, that his #1 foreign policy risk was Saddam Hussein and weapons of mass destruction. Did you know that just about every intel agency across the globe said Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction? Do you know the CIA director got agitated with George W. Bush when he looked at the information and said, this is all you have? And the CIA director said, Mr. President, it's a slam dunk. That's a year and a half after 9/11. Donnie, Joe Biden was there. Hillary Clinton was there. George W. Bush was there. You were there. I was there, okay? I was wrong on the Iraq war, just like all of those people that I mentioned.
Yeah,
as you were. As, by the way, 75% of Americans were.
Yeah.
Joe Biden needs to say, you know what? I was there. I was there during the crime bill. I had seen black communities ravaged by crack. What did you want me to do? I had to do something. I had to do something. And it's easy for you to sit there behind your laptop drinking your soy latte in 2019, judging me for trying to make the country better.
Joe.
All right, this advice, by the way, Donnie, it's free to Joe Biden and his campaign.
Yeah, and Joe,
you can use that too.
Yeah.
Joe, you're right on. This is where his age becomes a benefit. And he says things like, you know, the next time we're confronted with going to war, I have that experience. And maybe I'll pause a little extra. I wouldn't have done it different then, as to your point, neither would most of my compatriots. And I do think the American populace is intelligent enough and can understand enough that in this instance, all those experiences, even if by today's standards were the wrong call, will get me closer to a right call. I don't think that there's anything anything that he cannot do. Now, he can't do it as, even though you're right, as emotional as you say, hey, don't judge me. You can judge me, but judge me under these contexts. And I believe this is where his age, and this is why I also think his Charlottesville message yesterday was so much more resonant than had any of the other candidates deliver it. Age and experience and losing 2 children and losing a wife and going to wars where maybe we shouldn't get you to a place where now things are not always black and white, and you need somebody who's been able to see those grays over the last 50 years.
Well, and that have made mistakes. John Heilman admits that he made some terrible mistakes along the way, but did the best that he could do, and he's learned from those mistakes, just as Donnie said. But, you know, John, I'm curious. You've written several books about presidential campaigns. You've covered a lot of presidential campaigns. I've never seen one that's been about the past. They're all about the future. Right. And if Joe Biden is always apologizing about his past, he's lost the plot already.
Right, I totally agree with that, Joe. And I think, you know, it's interesting. It is the case that Biden, unlike some of these fresher faces, has the burden of having a long history. And the fact is that in today's Democratic Party, he is out of step with where the energy is on the activist left. He may not be out of step with where the mainstream of the party in toto is, but in terms of the activist left, in terms of a lot of the people that drive the dynamics of the Democratic nomination fight, he is historically, throughout his career, he's been more centrist than where that part of the party is. And one of the things that you've noted, I think has been most surprising, has been in this run-up to his announcement, and now all the way up to and including this call to Anita Hill, is how defensive he's been. The sight of him going out and claiming, I'm the most progressive Democrat that you've ever seen. The floating of the trial balloon that he was going to put Stacey Abrams on the ticket preemptively at the beginning of the race. And now the phone call, this transparently politically timed phone call to Anita Hill on the eve of him announcing, those are not the acts of a confident candidate. They're not the acts of a confident frontrunner. They're the acts of someone who is in a kind of defensive crouch about his history. And if he is in that defensive crouch and he is making the race about that history, he is going to have a very, very hard time transitioning towards running a winning campaign.
I think all those acts are blue check mark, and sort of the inside baseball folks will be watching those. I don't think voters across America are following that specifically. We saw that with Huggate, which was ridiculous, and everyone realized that. Well, especially people who vote in America.
And by the way, you'll get a lot of people will be angry that you just said that.
Sorry.
I will tell you, from day one, you were warning Democrats about Kavanaugh and the charges against Kavanaugh. And we've talked to Democratic senators who lost, who came back and said, Mika, you were right. You were right about Kavanaugh. And I think you're just staking out a position on Biden, and that's your analysis. But you have a history of certainly knowing what the American people think on these issues a lot more than blue check marks. Wow. Reverend Al, I always love talking to you. I enjoy our phone calls because you get it. I mean, you get politics. You've been around it on the grassroots level, on the national level. You know, my feeling from hearing you is that you agree with Bill Clinton that it's better to be strong and wrong than weak and right. And Joe Biden, while you disagree with Joe Biden on the crime bill, you wouldn't want him spending the rest of his campaign apologizing about the crime bill. Apologize, get it behind you, talk about the future, and take it to Trump.
I also think we've got to be fair, and as we analyze this, when we go back to 94, let's also go to 2004, 2008, where Joe Biden stood with a black man named Barack Obama when people were calling him a Muslim and calling him names, and he fought for same-sex marriage. I mean, one of the things that bothers me is these latte liberators, or we used to call them limousine liberals, that can go back 30 years but can't go back 10 years, because then they have to count for where were they when we needed them. So they can ask me, Reverend Al, you led Howard Beach, where was Bernie? Well, where were they during Trayvon. So, I mean, it's a lot of the judges who can't, in my opinion, stand up to judgment themselves. Joe Biden made mistakes, but in the last decades, a lot of these so-called self-anointed and appointed progressives have been progressive on everything but issues like race and things that make them uncomfortable. So before we start judging, let's also look at who the judge is.
Well, and you also, you're right. I mean, Joe Biden was the first to move forward on same-sex marriage, on the legalization of it. A lot of people inside the Obama administration, I remember in real time, they were enraged at Joe Biden. Joe Biden was a persona non grata. You will never hear this, but he was persona non grata inside the Obama administration because he pushed the president toward that position before his reelection campaign. Barack Obama did not want to be pushed there, and he was given the cold shoulder by staff for quite some time. It was a few ugly months there. That's part one of it. Part two, if you're going to talk about what he did in the Judiciary Committee with Anita Hill, that was bad. But you're not talking about the fights that he waged consistently for Democrats. I remember throughout the 1980s, Joe Biden leading the push, the fight against William Rehnquist getting on the Supreme Court as Chief Justice, against Antonin Scalia getting on the court as Supreme Justice. And Biden was a pit bull. He fought nonstop. So, as you said, if these latte liberators, as you say, I love that, I'm going to use that from now on. Thank you, Reverend Al. If these latte liberators want to talk about Joe Biden's time on the Judiciary Committee, you know what? You're not allowed to just pick his strikeouts.
Yeah.
You got to talk about all the doubles that he slammed to the wall, all of the home runs, all of the things he did right, and taken in context. If you are a Democrat, if you are a progressive, he did a lot more good than he did bad. Context. It's the word of the day on Sesame Street. Look it up.
Yeah, everyone stay with us. It's very well said.
Well, thank you, Mika. I think you've said some very well said things, too, this morning. Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.